this was graduation day for any comedian. Once you got Johnny's okay symbol, that was like an Olympic, like test person getting to go to the Olympics. You go, oh, okay, I've reached this level. What's the next step I have to do?
Welcome to Acting Smarter Now. I'm Lydia Nicole, actor, producer, and your acting career coach, here to help you cut through the noise, own your craft, and help transform your career from undiscovered to unstoppable. So, I have a question for you today. How do you combine your talents and gifts and start a business? Well, today I am joined by comedian, actor, writer, solo performer, and agent Pat Hazell, and he's sharing with us how he's used his bookings to help his fellow artists. So without further ado, let's go to the interview. You have been called one of the funniest people in America. And you were an original writer on Seinfeld when it started. So when you look back, what are the key turning points that actually moved your career forward as a performer and as a writer?
Oh, I appreciate that question. And by, introducing me as one of the funniest people in America, that's suddenly people are watching differently. I'm off duty right now for being hilarious, right? So I know when to do it and I went, no, not to. But I started in Omaha, Nebraska, and I had a couple of different things that gave me momentum. One was that I entered this Showtime's Funniest People in America contest. So how I got that title was that they went for the funniest person in each state, and Nebraska didn't have a lot of funny people in it. So I was able to take the crown in Nebraska. And then they put the states against each other, I guess, on video and had voting and so forth. So I had a particularly good set at the time, and it was a long time ago. But I remember that among those 5 finalists were Ellen DeGeneres, and I think she ended up winning the Funny Person in America at that time. You look back at things and there are highlights. There are moments when Johnny Carson taps you to do the Tonight Show, and there was an era where that was, a legacy moment that you go, oh, okay, I've graduated from being a club comic to being a guy that can go work corporate events or do theaters, because you had the borrowed equity of Johnny Seinfeld or not. That's funny. I have 2 other big moments, but Johnny Carson saying to me, "You got the okay symbol," and then another leapfrogging ahead when I started working for Jerry Seinfeld. It wasn't a random thing. They had watched a play that I wrote, and having produced my own play with my own content, showed that I could produce material that was written in a dialogue form, which was helpful for sitcom writing. But a very unusual moment was submitting a play as my writing sample because most people are writing a spec script from an existing TV show. So I really had pursued developing my own content all along as a way of showcasing my ability, if that makes sense. And so, there were little steps throughout that led to other writing things. I was a warm up comedian as a side job, really to make money so that I could produce my plays. And in the course of doing that, there was a woman named Diane English that had a show called Love and War. So Diane had me as a warm up initially in Love and War, and I was getting a lot of audience laughs about the episode. And when a producer went off to, was out for a couple of weeks, she asked if I would come into the writing room and punch up material and be kind of a consultant at that. And it was really fun and interesting. It's so different to write with a team as it is as an individual. But those were some of the stepping stones, I think. But ultimately, what I do now, and I didn't realize it, by self-producing plays or putting on one-man shows or doing a magic show, all of those essentially groom you to be a producer. So, that puts me in a seat of putting out shows nationally for touring and that sort of a thing.
You have worn a lot of hats. And as somebody who has worn a lot of hats, I know the challenge that it can present. You were a stand up, you're an actor, you're a TV writer, you're a playwright, you're a producer, and you're a director. How has being multi hyphenate helped you, and how can actors strategically broaden their skills without losing focus?
Oh, that's very important because focus is the key to any one of those things being done right. So you have to know when to have what hat on. And when you are behind the camera or you're directing, it's one thing. If you're directing in a scene you're in, you have to be an actor 100% in the scene. So you actually have to turn on and off parts of your brain. And I would say similarly, when you're a producer and you're dealing with the budget and you're dealing with the logistics and the theater and the toilet paper in the bathroom and the light bulbs on the marquee, when you walk on stage, you can't take any of that with you. You just have to go, tough break, no toilet paper, folks. Like you just got to realize that there's a period of time, just like turning off your telephone in an audition or something. You can't afford for something to steal your focus as a performer. And I find that it's something that not everybody can do. Sometimes they're fretting or they're watching the scene from overhead and then they leave and all they think about is, oh, I should have done this. I didn't have this moment. Oh, I wasn't smiling when I said, is that good tasting tuna? But they have a tendency to fix it all in the car on the way home. And it's so critical that if you walk into a performance, an audition, any situation, an interview, that moment is for you to be who you are, right? And knowing when to be yourself and when to be the character, also very important. Because I've auditioned a lot of people who I liked as people, and I interviewed them and we talked to them. And then when they were the character, something switched where they needed the part so bad that they asked, there was a little desperation. They weren't, embodying the character. They were still an actor who said, please give me this job. And there have been many an actor that have come in and surprised me where they flip that switch and they're so in the zone and they're so hilarious and it's not what I expected. It may not be what's written on the page. It may not be as directed, but they bring a choice. They come in with a choice and they go, hey, this is going to be the stoner guy instead of the smart aleck or the whatever. And you go, oh, I never thought of it that way. And many, many more, I think directors and producers respond to the wow factor of, oh, I could see this. Oh, I can already imagine this. So, I feel like the biggest thing that actors may do wrong is that they go, oh, and I'll be great when you have the scenery and when you have the costume and when you have the makeup. Like once it's all, dialed in for them, I can handle that. Well, that's not what, unfortunately, the hardest part of the job is getting it without that. If they're auditioning you against an animated character, you're never going to see that character, not on tape day, not on anything until you go to the movies and see it. So I feel like your real focus is like the number one thing. I would say, life balance is critical. Being, knowing that getting sleep and eating right and having exercise, all of that makes you kind of a human being. And sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we stay up all night, working on it, or we do whatever. And that usually is detrimental to the result. And other times, I think you have to care, but not that much, right? You have to just feel like I just want to do this job well today, and they will see that. I feel like then you'll carry the day if you do it that way.
When did you realize that you had to go from moment to moment and know what hat you were wearing? Because I think we all who wear a lot of hats have that breakdown. I know for myself, I was able to produce and be an actor and be able to flip my hats. But when I was doing stand up and I had shows that I was producing, that was the biggest challenge for me. To go, oh, I'm not producer now, I'm getting on stage and I just have to be the talent. And it cost me some showcases early on because I was so committed in the show working. To me, stand up was different from acting. Like I could be the producer, and then once I was on the stage, I'm doing the stage. But with stand up, it was difficult in that I also had to corral a bunch of unruly comics and not trusting the process because it's easy for us to say, do this, but I want to know behind the curtain, how did you figure it out?
Well, the first thing I would say, know your system, know yourself and what works for you. So if you need to escape from that, if you need to take your producer hat off 20 minutes before and go in a dressing room and look at your set and whatever, you need to, it's like the sign in The Wizard of Oz. No one gets in to see the wizard. No way, no how. You have to make it a hard and fast thing. You cannot contact me from this moment until I come off the stage, right? You have to, and I'm saying for your children, for your spouse, for whoever it is that might be a distraction, you might look down at that phone 1 minute before you go on and there's an emergency at home, but you can't really do anything about it. So it's better for you not to know until you come off stage. So whatever your system is, and it's the same with preparation. I know that I always performed better at night if I had a nap in the daytime, some short nap, 3 to 3:30, any kind of thing. And I was like that in the early part of my career. When I got married and had kids, I had a spouse that thought napping was lazy work or something, like you should probably just get one more thing done or go mow the lawn and so forth. And it did impact the kind of performance that I did. And I didn't realize what it did was it took off the sharpness. It took off the wittiness, right? Like I wasn't, and oftentimes you're showcasing at clubs late at night and things. So the nap was just sort of a reset. So your day kind of started at a different time. But once I knew that and I started doing it again, all of my play performance, all of those things. And sometimes you don't say to the crew and everybody, I'm going to take a nap. Like I have a production manager who knows during the day when we're doing sound check, if I say I have a conference call, he knows I'm going to take a nap. And that, the dressing room goes dark and I lay on that couch and then he won't bother me for 45 minutes or something, right? So make a system and know your system. And if you're a person that works best in the morning and that's when you write best, then make kind of rules for yourself and your family. I know that when I did work for Jerry Seinfeld, until about noon, he didn't want anybody to be a time robber and steal like, hey, can you sign these books? Hey, can you do this thing? It's like, oh, I don't do any of that until afternoon. So it meant writing time. It meant, whatever kind of thing he was working on. And it just made me understand that there were systems for each person that were very important. But the other thing I would say to you is that I discovered that I never was an actor. I performed in things, I was in plays, but I often was myself and I wasn't the character. I was just a guy who could remember lines and was funny. And I always had great respect for actors. And I know how to direct actors and communicate to actors. But I realized, this is a hat that I have a choice. If I'm going to be an actor, and I'm in a number of things, if I write it for myself, then I'm the appropriate person for the role. And, it's not that I have to be myself. I'm just the closest to my character. And that's when I do my best work. So the plays that I wrote or the sitcom I was in, I wasn't really an actor. I was just Pat with a lot of actors around me. You know what I mean?
I'm going to push back here because I saw
Okay.
your showcase, and you may not be the actor who goes into different characters and whatever, but when you're on that stage delivering your one-man show, you are the performer, you are the actor. Part of being a good stand-up is you are an actor. You're just using a different medium to communicate with people, but you are bringing certain acting skills.
I agree with that. But what's interesting is that I don't have the range, of an actor that, is going to do a lot of characters. I play one character very well.
But there are a lot of movie stars that play one character very well.
Right. And I play, here's the funny thing. I play a character so close to myself. I mean, it isn't me because I am a storyteller and all that, but it's so close to myself that when people talk to me off stage and I walk on stage and then start doing this material and then come off stage, people can't quite tell the difference. I know what switch to flip. I consider the threshold of the stage when you cross in to be this, great sanctuary that we enter as a storyteller, where we're bringing the audience on the ride. And I would say that to any performer that works live is that you're communicating this storytelling to a living, breathing organism. And stand-up is the most immediate. A storytelling often happens between characters and something unfolds. and the audience is watching a little bit from out here. But when you have that fourth wall down and you're addressing people directly, your acting partner is the audience, and they are actually responding. So it's not a monologue, it's a dialogue. And when they laugh or when they sigh or when they cringe or when they do all that, they're telling you something and you're responding to it. Very good stand-ups will, they'll milk a section where, oh, this is going well. Oh, they like this. I'm going to give them more of this, right? And if things get kind of where like they respond in a way, they're like, ugh, I'm not going there. The stand-up is savvy enough to sort of dismount and go, you know what, let me try another topic, and that is like surfing a wave essentially, which is you've got to be watching the wave and you have to know when to get into the curl and get in the pipeline and stay low, and your goal is to stay up as long as you can and to enjoy the ride. And that is why it's such a fun thing and there's so much adrenaline in it, versus if you do an animated film and you voice the character and then somebody draws the thing and then years later it comes out, like you're not connected to the audience responding at home watching the animated movie. You never taste that success in the same way. But anyway, I feel like knowing when to put on one hat and knowing when to your system works or not is to know the strengths and weaknesses of yourself. So I find myself to be a very good writer now in retrospect, like looking back at my writing. But during the writing, I was writing to give the performer side of me something to do. I didn't really like auditioning and getting rejection after rejection. I understood that there's a volume of things that you're going to have to take, but I kept thinking, couldn't I do something, write an independent film, come up with a funny commercial, do something that I could start doing soon? So part of it was all of these jobs that I took were about creating work for myself. And I would say that now actors see it so much more often that they turn out to be very good writers or good directors or good producers because they've been involved in production or they've been observant of somebody who did a good job or communicated well with them. So I think a skill that people who weren't actors is knowing how to talk to other actors, to knowing where they're sensitive, to knowing where they're insecure, to know, I've had a number of times where I see an actor on a soundstage who's like, oh, nobody's going to like me, I'm nervous, whatever. And I go, no, you already have the job. Like, we cast you because you're an element that's very important to us and you know what you're doing and you do that well. I guarantee you that guy up on the boom mic is not nervous about what you're doing. He's nervous that the boom mic's going to drop into the shot. That guy at the camera is nervous that he's, got you framed up right. The guy behind him is nervous that the focus is correct. Like, everybody has a element of wanting to get it right for the team. And the truth is they're not thinking anything about you, right? Like, by the time the actors are in front of the camera, their job is to record the event. They're not going to, go, stop, let's recast this lady right now. No, it's like, we looked at a lot of people for this part, and this is the person we want to do the job. So sometimes I think, taking out the self-judgment and taking out the hat that says, oh, I think the producer wants me to do this. They'll tell you in the next take. You don't only worry about that moment. Live in the present of the moment of the scene, right? And that's right. What I do with stand-up very much when I'm doing the Wonder Bread years or the Permanent Record Show, these different shows that I do. I feel like I have a story to tell. This is the person I'm telling it to. The audience is kind of as one. And my goal is to bring them together. When every night of every audience, people are coming from different walks of life, different circumstances they bring with them, a different circumstance of the job and the day and what's going on, the weather, all of it impacts people. So now the lights go on, the curtain goes up. Now it's my job to get them into one, shape them into one thing. Then they become the audience. And then they have this sort of, they laugh together, they cry together, they breathe, they leave and they kind of elbow, oh, that happened to me. Did that happen to you? And you feel like a contagiousness about bringing people together. And I think stand-ups that understand that are very smart, right? They know how to make the storytelling be the common denominator where everybody, doesn't matter if you're 65 or you're 25, there's a time that you were younger and you have a common denominator with your neighbor. That's how humanity works.
And I'm going to go in a little deeper of what you're saying, because I came to LA seeking a career as a movie star. And so when I came to Los Angeles, we didn't have DEI. We didn't have a lot of roles for people of color, let alone a mixed breed. We didn't have that. And so I started creating projects for myself, because I was like, well, I'm not going to wait for you. I'm going to do what I have to do for myself. The actor today, whether they know it or not, they are already starting to put those different hats on because of the self-tape situation. And now some casting offices are saying, hey, shoot it like it's real, like if you're really in that scene. So they're pushing the envelope for actors. I've always been a believer, and working with Robert Townsend for so long, that you do your projects yourself. I disagree with you that you're not an actor. I just think you figured out what works for you. Yeah, I'm going to push back on you, Pat. I'm sorry.
You can push back. Listen, here's the thing. I'm capable of acting in a scene, but I will tell you that in my head, I'm always like, oh, I'm a guy that happens to fit in this suit, and I'm pretending to be a detective. Like I don't have the same mechanism that the actors that I really respect.
I understand.
Right.
And a lot of sitcom actors have the same type of suit you have. They wear that one suit and they are great in it. And that is what pays the mortgage and takes care of everything. So, because I want actors to know there are different levels. You don't have to be, the superstar, but you can make a living as an actor if you find what fits you, what works for you. And you have been really smart and creative in figuring it out for yourself. It's like you have figured out a model that works for you. So you write shows, you do your stand-up, you bring elements of your stand-up into your shows. You know enough of performing to say, how am I going to bring that audience in? So when they come in with all these problems, when my show starts, they're only going to know about the show. And as performers, writers, and directors, that is the job of what we do, is for that period of time, whenever we have them, to make them forget about the horrors that they have to go back into the world and deal with. And so as performers, we have to give that. So I just wanted to bring that little public service announcement into the thing.
I think that's very important. I actually think performers have a gift, and it's unique, to a performer. So they happen to carry a lot of these difficult situations, which is waiting to be picked. And that, I think, is an unfortunate part of the way the system has been built. But I think that's kind of not the same anymore. It really, there are ways for you to get on stage and to be in independent film and to write. It costs nothing, time and discipline to write. And even if you're not good at it, you will get better at it. And looking at the project as a story that needs to be told that no one else has told, that makes you the authentic voice to tell the story. And I feel like we're all writing our story as we go, just how we live as a human being. And it's okay for you then to fantasize or imagine a different scenario, a story for that character. That what if is so much fun. That's the part of it where when I wrote my first play, I played kind of the smart-ass mean brother, which I wasn't. You know what I mean? Like, I had several brothers, whatever. I was like, oh, I get to play the guy that, gets all the snappy quips. Okay, that'll be fun, right? But I was able to glean it from myself and my co-author. We both had brothers, and we were like, what's the weirdest things your brothers ever did to you? Like, we started to look at the true life scenarios and exaggerate that. But it was really fun to play that part.
In the beginning, when you were getting into professional writing, not just writing because you were writing before, but getting into, you're stand up now, you're getting into rooms, you're being asked to come and punch up stuff, and now you're being asked to write scripts for sitcoms. Who were the people that influenced you and gave you those little nuggets that you still use today in your writing?
Well, I'm going to go all the way back to high school to start, because there was a drama teacher named Greg Doty who he was a new guy. We had a woman that we all liked, and she would let us goof around, and we didn't do anything. And like it was like being in theater was like just a free period off, and you got to have fun. But we weren't really serious about our theater because she didn't make us be serious about our theater. And then this guy comes along, and we resisted him. We were like, "Nah, that's not going to be good. No, that won't be funny. No, we're not going to do that play." Like we were a hard nut for this guy, and a group of us, quite a few. And he said, "Well, what kind of play would you like to do? Like, what do you guys watch?" And we said, "Oh, well, after school we watch MASH on television. That's funny." And he goes, "Oh, let's see if MASH has a play." And he looked up a thing, and he found that there was a written version of a MASH play that became the movie before the sitcom or whatever. And he said, "Okay, well, what if we do this?" And we got to play these parts of Hawkeye and Klinger and whatever. So we were into it. And when we were rehearsing, we said, "Yeah, but it's not really like the show. They don't have the announcements over the intercom that are funny and stuff." He goes, "Well, why don't you guys write some of those?" Like, he encouraged us to adapt to that kind of thing. And, at the time we were plagiarizing from the sitcom, and we were doing all kinds of stuff, but we were kind of put in charge of making it funnier. So I would just say, all the way back then, we were given license to improve something we wanted to put on, right? So that always sort of stayed in the back of our head, because that same guy that end of the year would be like drama club banquet. He goes, "All right, guys, do you want to write some sketches, or do you want to whatever?" And we're like, "Oh, we watch Second City television. We watch some of this stuff. Yeah, we want to write some sketches, Monty Python style or whatever." So, we were always trying to, outfox each other, coming up with funny things, which, I grew up on Carol Burnett and Tim Conway and those folks, and they were the funniest thing to me, especially when they would crack each other up. When the scene wouldn't go right, it was twice as funny. So anyway, that's in my DNA when I moved to LA, and I decide that I'm not going to take I was a magician that did comedy, and I was going to get rid of the magic tricks and just do stand-up comedy. And as I was doing that, I had to be really cautious not to take tricks on stage and all of those kinds of things. But George Shapiro, who was a manager for Jerry Seinfeld, and he managed Carl Reiner and Andy Kaufman and lots of folks. George really liked my style. He liked what I did. He would always say to me, "You got to be writing at the same time as you're performing." Like, he would drop things into my head to say, "If you want to do this part of it, then you're going to have to develop a muscle for it," and that sort of thing. So that's what led me to writing a more narrative material, was that I wanted the people who were making decisions to see me as more than a stand-up. And I think similarly, when I did the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, this was graduation day for any comedian. Once you got Johnny's okay symbol, that was like an Olympic, like test person getting to go to the Olympics. You go, "Oh, okay, I've reached this level. What's the next step I have to do?" And so, in order for me to have a sitcom, I knew that I would have to write a spec script or something. And the one thing that I did differently than most people is, instead of writing it and handing over a pile of paper to sit in a room and get dust, I decided to put it on as a play in Hollywood, where I could invite people. So even if they didn't really understand the writing, if they didn't see the humor in it, they couldn't argue with the audience. If they were watching it with an audience, they'd go, "This is pretty funny. I don't get it, but all these people get it," right? My idea was proof of concept, show these characters on their feet. So I will say it wasn't a great play in terms of a plot, but it was a great play for comedy and character. And our goal was to show them characters so compelling that they want to see them each week in a sitcom. Like, oh, what if it's a different situation? So I didn't want the situation to be the whole purpose of the play. And it wasn't like a well thought out plan. It was how funny can these two brothers be and how funny can their dad be? Because that's what I want, is I want a chance to write more for these characters, right? So in a weird way, I still had ownership over the play. And then it had to be licensed, like Columbia TriStar optioned it for a movie, and they had to have, they had to pay us for the rights to the play. So it's a long road to go on. But then when they don't make it a Columbia TriStar as a movie, we still have the rights. So then I'm able to take those rights over to NBC and pitch it as a sitcom and create a new, we couldn't take the written material they paid for, but we could write something new for those characters, right? And all along the way, I feel like I was teaching myself to be a showrunner. I didn't know it, but it was like talking about the arc of the characters, what happens to their relationship, what happens to their parents along the way. And I feel like all of that experience, when I got into a room of a team of writers, made a big difference, because I wasn't afraid to ask questions or to say, oh, here's a, what do you think about this for a better line? And when you get known in sitcom circles as being a good punch-up guy, you're kind of like the sniper on a SWAT team. You don't get to do everything, but you go up in the high tower and they wait until they need you, and then they call for you, and you better land the shot. At that point, you're a specialty person. And I did that for quite a while, and it was really fun, but I wasn't learning much. So that's when I began to try to learn structure. I was learning much more about making the story the king, create an armature that jokes could decorate on, but they weren't critical to. And if they weren't on the story topic, that they had to go. And that was, I think, a big maturing in my writing, as was, putting the story first. So whether I'm a director or whether I'm an actor or whether I'm a writer, the story is the king that we're all working on. And I feel like as long as you can talk to people about that, then they know where they stand. Oh, here's the importance of this in the story. At this moment, I don't need you to be, over the top, because we have to save that for 2 scenes from now when the real problem comes. So when people understand how they fit into a story, they have a tendency to act appropriately. You know what I mean? They have the right sensibility. That's just a little side note, but.
Oh, no, this is a good note. How did you start to learn structure when you are the punch up guy? You are in these rooms with all these writers, and you decide you want to expand your writing ability. You start to work on structure. Who are the people that you were gleaning from to learn that?
Well, there were several different people that I worked with along the way. I had a partner named Matt Goldman early on, and Matt was a writer that wrote novels and things. So he was plotting much bigger things and how they tracked. But I think it was just the aha that when I was on sitcoms, punching up, or as a consultant, I realized that the script could change dramatically if the story changed. And if that happened, none of my jokes mattered anymore. They'd go out with the page. They wouldn't stay. But story things, that was sort of the mechanical workings of it. And usually, if there was a problem, if we were in a rewrite or something, it's like, why doesn't this work? And when the why doesn't this work is a big story change, you throw out all that other stuff. It becomes irrelevant how you decorate it. It's like, no, we need to know how these two people could have had a baby. Where in their life could they have been in the same place? How could we not know it now, right? It's a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. But the big picture in the end is the most important part. That's when the story reveals itself. And so I feel like comedians aren't always the best storytellers, because they have a tendency to go for the quick, fast joke. They go, because we might be, in a movie theater and throw in a funny line over the movie and everyone laughs at it. Well, that's a delight, but it isn't a story. And to make a screenplay work, to make a sitcom work, to make a web series work, there's an awful lot of structure that's important. And the mechanics of it, I think, they're both basic and complex. The simplicity of the hero wanting something and obstacles getting in their way sounds like that's nothing. But figuring out how to make those things happen organically and to kind of sneak up on you and to be different than the last time that a person lost their job and car broke down and all that, like, you need new obstacles. You need to face different mountains. And then understanding also, what kind of story is this? Is this a man versus man story? Is this a man versus nature story? Is this a man versus himself story? Which is the hardest story to do as a writer and as an actor, which is how do you show a person battling with themselves over an issue that they refuse to sort of take stake in? But when you know that that's what you're trying to do, then it gets really interesting, right? Your dialogue is quite different if it's Bad News Bears and two teams are fighting each other versus if it's Paul Newman in The Color of Money and he's going down this like rabbit hole that you don't realize isn't about a pool tournament, it's about a man's character.
You learn structure, you're starting to write your own one-man shows, because it takes a lot to put a one-man show together, and to do the rewrites and the rewrites and the rewrites to have it's smooth. I listened to you in an interview, and you were talking about one of the times that you were on the Tonight Show, and at the last minute they were running late, and they said to you, you need to take this piece, this joke out. And you were like, oh yeah, sure. And you take the joke out, and then you couldn't connect the dots for a second.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Well, talk about that.
When you go up, when you're in a play anywhere, when you don't remember your line or you don't know what's next, it's like a free fall. You don't have, because on live television, which was, I mean, I guess it was taped for live airing that night, same day. They don't stop and go, let's just do it again or whatever. You just go, and I took it for granted. When I said, yeah, I can do that, I did take it for granted because I assumed I would just skip the line. Well, when I skipped the line, it wasn't my regular routine. It was a monologue put together for television for that appearance. So it wasn't necessarily flowing into what I would normally say. And I remember that pause to me seemed like a lifetime. I'm sure it was a few seconds, but in those few seconds, the audience, I thought, well, what am I going to say to them? So I kind of was truthful. I said, you ever been in the middle of your set, in the middle of a Tonight Show, and you just had no idea what was coming next? And they laughed at that as if I had put the pause to set that joke up, which was not a joke. And while they were laughing, I thought, come up with something. Like, I can't, and it went quiet again. And I was just like, I'm never going to be on this show again. That's a time when my focus was not there. And and then almost like Meet Mr. Lincoln at Disneyland, the robotic president's hall kind of thing. I just suddenly was like, at the grocery store. Like the next joke came and the audience was on edge because they're like, what is going to happen to this guy? Like, and the last part of the set went really well. But I will say the problem really didn't lie in memory or not memory. It was kind of two things that I would say were cocky. The first was, normally I would run this set the night before. I would go to a comedy magic club or an improv or somewhere, and I would say, you're only doing these 5 minutes. Be sure you got it down. Go somewhere, go two places the night before. Even if they're bad, hear the words, get that muscle memory going. And for some reason, on that particular set, I was having like a party or doing something in my house, and I went, I can't cancel the party. Like I didn't do the preparation. And so that was a part of it. The other was that I didn't know it was no big deal to use cue cards. Like the hosts of these shows have bullets written down and all of that. And I easily could have had a set with each of the things lined up, talk about groceries, talk about this thing, talk about the car, right? And then I would have known exactly where to go. But I felt like that was training wheels. And so whenever they would ask, I go, I don't need any cards, right? And I realize now I use them all the time when I do custom corporate events and I'm doing brand new jokes that I've never done, or I'll use a teleprompter. And that's all it is. It's not a crutch. It's just an insurance policy that you don't have to memorize all new stuff today. It's very important to use the tools that are available to you, because then you can be very relaxed. And if something's going well, you laugh and they go there and then you go. And I could even look at that and skip a joke and go to the next joke because it would be right there for me. Not the whole joke, but enough of the idea that I could say, my parents are nuts or whatever, right? And I would say I learned from that at the moment that it's okay to have those helpful things. It's okay to take all the things that are available to us. And yeah, I mean, whatever you need, you should ask for. And if you're an actor and you think it would be fun to have a watch on because of the way you're playing the scene, or you need a wedding ring, or, whatever it is, it's like, I think this might be better if I'm wearing a tie, then pitch it. They could say no, but if you have a bit of business or an idea or something that puts you into a better position, even the shoes you wear can make a difference. If you're sliding around or you have traction or whatever, test that stuff out in character. And I mean, I used to sort of wonder when I was a kid in high school, what are we doing a dress rehearsal in the clothes for? Like, who cares? We can put the clothes on. Well, you find out a lot of stuff. You find out if you have a dress on when you sit and what's going on, and is the thing going to get caught in a piece of scenery or whatever. Even when you walk through the doorway, it's really great to go to a theater, walk the path you're going to walk, see what's going to happen. Like, that stuff gets rid of all the little problems that you go, I didn't realize the table was going to be too small for my computer and the water. Well, you didn't go out and look. So anyway, these are preparation notes, but whether you're a speaker or you're a comic or you're an actor, know the groundwork, know the territory. You go from one theater to the next on tour every day. When I direct somebody, I go, let's run the opening. Let's see how you're going to get on the stage. Let's run the closing. I want to see that curtain come down because I don't want it to come down so fast that it clips you in the back of the head. I want to see everything working. And that is really helpful. Then you don't have to worry about it. You and I ran into this when we were in New York, where suddenly, FedEx didn't deliver our materials, or,
Right.
We didn't have something. And then that's when your producer brain is the most important. You're like, okay, right. No panic. What are the best things we can do in 24 hours and have what we need? What will suffice to get our audience in the seats, whatever. And that's the most important thing that a producer can do, is not panic.
Two things. Again, you opened up a can and I want to go right inside of it. You talked about your set that you were doing for the Tonight Show. It wasn't your regular set, but you had cobbled jokes together for that set. Just for the audience, for those people who don't understand that process, can you walk us through when you get a Tonight Show or a late night show? You're not just lifting your set as a comic, but they're giving you notes. They're telling you this joke, this joke, this joke. And then you've got to run it a few times before they okay it. Can you walk us through how that feels?
The most important thing to know about all of it is that usually your first one is your best material. You try to figure out, what's my great opener? Okay, this is what I always open with. What's my closer? You're trying to couple together this train, but it's a much shorter train if you're used to doing, 45 minutes, a half hour, 20 minutes. You know what? Make sense out of this in 6 minutes, or even on these shows like there was Star Search, where 2 minutes. What are you going to do in 2 minutes? Like, you've got to figure out still how to open, what you're going to do, and how it's going to close. So the first one is really the most obvious one. It's the most evident one, and the one that you probably fight to get your best stuff in because you want to look great. Everyone after that becomes a real challenge because you go, wait a minute, I already spent my opener. I did that. They're not going to let me open with that again. Now you have to have a joke that you're working on or that you have in your set that is strong enough to be the opener. And that's why you start practicing with it as the opener. And you have to have something that calls it back and is a closer and is strong enough to be a closer. Because if you start to do with sets and they start dropping off and are less funny, your invitations are over, right? So each time, and this, I'm referencing back to the Tonight Show, and that some of this process has changed, but it's the same if you're going on America's Got Talent. If you're going to be on a next time, if you're going to be voted on a third time, you got to have something as strong and hopefully stronger as you're getting closer to the finish line. You've got people, they have to undisputedly see you doing bulletproof material with a lot less time to put it together, right? And sometimes they'll even be a producer whose job is to make the scenic thing elevate what you're doing, the song you're singing or whatever. They're like, hey, we're going to have a star field and we're going to have fireworks. And it looks unbelievable. But you don't have a lifetime to prepare that finale. You have a few weeks, maybe, if you're lucky. Sometimes it's shorter if you're on an ongoing series like that. So I would say, the best thing you can be doing anytime for any of this is to be constantly building an arsenal of material that's in some form of development so that when you start to spend this stuff, you have more. Comedians it used to be that if you had an album or if you had a HBO special for a stand-up comic, you go on tour, they don't want to see that stuff. They already heard it, which is the exact opposite of what a singer goes through. When they've heard your stuff, if you don't do your hits, they're pissed at you, right? But for a comedian, it's like, yeah, what else you got? You got anything new? And I think the best thing about today's environment for a stand-up comic is that the social media and the Instagram allows them to take pieces from things and chop it all up and put it out a little bit at a time and get people kind of excited and create an algorithm where it's like, if you want to see more Lydia, here it comes. We'll feed it to you. They'll just keep dropping it in your feed, right? And then people get excited. They're like, I'd like to see her do a whole set. So it's just this series of little teasers. And many comics are using, crowd work, which is not their material. They're interacting with the audience and they're finding something funny from that night. Then they put that out as kind of their teaser promo. And I would say, if you're a stand-up comic, that's a really understanding algorithm, shooting your sets all the time, fishing for funny things that don't ruin your big closing bit. That becomes really valuable. It's different for actors. Actors, are usually in a structured scene. And I would say any actor that wants to work more that's not, seek out those independent filmmakers and those people who are making things on lower budgets who really need quality performers and oftentimes don't have the dollars and cents to use them. It's like, be part of the toolkit of a great writer, a great director, a great producer. Serve the stories and they will say, you can handle more. I want you to be this. If you look back at Lin-Manuel Miranda's early casting of folks that were in the Heights and so forth, there's some of the same people that were in Hamilton, that are same people who are moving into something else, because he created a killer ensemble of people who were just raising the level of his work with them being, loyal to that. So there are places and positions for everybody in this business if you're willing, like, to be a collaborative, a creative participant.
When actors or performers are doing one person shows and they're showcasing a portion of it, one of the things that I noticed when we were at APAP, just watching the performers, was I saw, and I didn't see this with you. With you, you knew what you were doing. You came on, you took the audience for a ride, and you never let them go until it was time to leave. What I saw with other performers were they apologized for the glitches and not understanding, hey, you're in a unnatural situation. Nothing is going your way. Just keep doing your stuff. Just keep, commit to what you got and do it no matter what. Unless it's something so catastrophic that you have to say, okay, there's a problem here. But what really stood in my mind was the fact that these performers paid so much money, had a limited amount of time, and wasted some of that time to apologize to the audience about the glitches. Something I learned a long time ago from a director when I was working on one of my one person shows was, the audience doesn't know your material. So just keep going. They don't know it. This is their first time, especially when you're doing a showcase. They don't know what you're supposed to be doing, what you're not supposed to be doing. So you don't need to telegraph it. I want to get from your point of view how you handle showcases, and when you work with other talent, how you help them through the showcase process.
Well, just for the person watching or listening, Showcasing is a unique situation where you're trying to put on a little portion of a much bigger piece, right? So if you're a band, you might have 15 minutes to play, and you have to decide how long is that 3 songs for us? Is it 4 songs? How do we want to do it? The first thing I would say to anybody, storyteller, musician, whatever, is don't try to do wall to wall. If you're given 18 minutes, don't time your set out for 18 minutes because somehow you're going to be racing to squeeze it in. Your mind is going to be about managing that thing so you don't go over, right? So, you're better off building it for 16 or 17 minutes and being sure that it can breathe and that you can be yourself and there's something normal about it, that sort of thing. The other thing is, you want to show a bit of range within the work, but not so much range that you confuse people. So if a musician says, I'm going to play this big killer fast song, I'm going to slow it down now and show you what it's like if I play some dance music. It's like in 15 minutes, don't slow it down. Like, don't say we can sing this ballad right here, because what happens is it bottoms the set out and they go, well, they're a talented singer, but that's weird, isn't it? Like somehow they don't see the scope of the night. You want people to leave wowed at every imaginable thing you do. Now, if you happen to be a ballad singer, open with it. Open with the ballad, right? Build up, build up, build up, and give them the fireworks at the end. But it's sometimes hard with a play or something like that to leapfrog from one section to another and show them the depth or the drama and then come back. So you have to pick a part, to me, that's accessible so that when they leave, they don't go, oh, that's a downer. It's like, well, no, only 3 minutes of this whole play is that dramatic. But it feels like a lot more of it because it's in a 15-minute set, right? And we witnessed the Ronnie Marmo, who does the Lenny Bruce thing. Now, it is critical. Lenny Bruce's life was about fighting these obstacles. So it was critical that this particular actor chose to show you the light side and the dark side of the piece so you could see all of it. But I feel like most people are, they're trying to be liked so much that they're showing all of their wares. They're like, I've got this and I've got this and I got this, right? And I've always said the saying, a man with 2 watches never really knows what time it is, right? Like, it's like the present moment. It's like hosting a party for 15 minutes. How do you want that to go? How do you want them to leave? I spend a lot of time getting an audience to come do it with anticipation. And then I need to meet and exceed that anticipation. I want to fill the room up with people who are on the edge of their seats waiting. And then I want to quickly set the tone. I think in the thing you saw, I put a little bit of nostalgic video at the top, just enough that they go, oh, he's taking us back in time. I didn't show them the whole, in a regular theater, it might be a 3-minute movie or something. I think I took 25 seconds to show a couple of images and then go, now buckle up, we're going on the ride. So I would say that you have to look at what it is you're doing with your showcase, what you're trying to achieve. I represent some other artists that are absurdist playwrights, and I say, you can't afford to leapfrog through the show. It's too confusing. Why don't you do the opening 15 minutes just like they're shot out of a cannon? And then when you get to that part, you say, there's so much more you'll see when we come to your venue. We can't wait to share it with you, right? In their case, it was important that they show us, they introduce the characters, then they get us in there, and then they just yank the rug out from under us, I think when I watched Roberts, he showed a lot of things. When you're a celebrity and you're doing a one-person show, you have other expectations where people go, what is this about? Is he being honest? Is this really the truth? And that sort of a thing. So in those situations, you want to be sure you're picking what I would consider to be a highlights reel, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I think it really is, it depends on what the artist is and what they're putting on. And there are people who I would say, don't showcase at all. If you're a big orchestra and you're in a little banquet room and you have to say, normally we're in a bigger place and it's not so loud and, all that, then you may not be in the appropriate situation to showcase. Then you've got to say, hey, we've got to rent that place across the street that fits a whole audience, and we're going to spend a little bit more money, but they're going to see a real orchestra in a real hall. And it's going to seem like our bandstands and everything are going to be amazing, right? So, all of those things are very important because a great showcase will last you for a few years. People will remember it, they'll book it, they'll talk about it. And a terrible showcase, even by a great artist, they will remember for many more years. And they'll go, yeah, they're not ready. I saw them do 10 minutes last year. It wasn't right. So, I guess the same goes for showcasing a scene as an actor or showcasing as a stand-up comedian to be discovered for a thing. This is like a camera ready, full on performance, even if 10 people show up. You don't say, what's with this crowd? It's not the crowd. Only one person who's coming to cast you on a late night television show is there, and you need to do it for that one person, as if that mattered to everybody. Because it's nothing more desperate than if they got on a bus, for a field trip, and the bus driver goes, well, I'm not feeling too well today, and I don't know exactly where I'm going. Like, as soon as you give people a sign, they want to get off that bus as fast as they can.
Yes, you brought this in earlier, the preparation. You got to prepare, so you're comfortable. And what I love about your story, everything that you've shared with us, is that you've been able to pivot every time something didn't work. You were able to go, okay, I got to move this quickly. Like, you just figured it out. And I think as performers, sometimes we got to get into that mindset where we can figure out whatever the crisis is at that moment and keep it going. The great stand-ups know how to do it really well. It is understanding, and I learned this, and I want to talk about this because I learned this taking my one woman shows on the road into colleges where they don't give a crap about you at all. They put you in the corner in the cafeteria. They will put you in a science room where there's a big ass table in front of you. They do not care at all. And I remember going to these places and to perform, and I'm like, this isn't a theater. And then the students coming in and going out, coming in, poking their head in. What you doing? Oh, I gotta go. And you're left there with nobody. And so you learn the art of just doing you. Just if they gave me a little corner, I'm doing my stuff in the little corner. They don't have any sound for me. They don't have lights for me. I'm doing what I got to do. It is okay. And I think as actors, comedians, singers, whoever you are, you got to bring that no matter what. And that only comes with the preparation. Going back to you talking about setting up your set for the Tonight Show and having to take that piece out. And you didn't think about, oh my God, this is not, I got to be ready for this. Not, I'll take it out and then get on stage and go, what did I just do? You got to be able to handle the stuff. And I don't think a lot of times performers from all walks really understand that, especially when they're starting out. So that when you have a catastrophic moment, you just crumble and die. You're like, I'm never gonna be able to look myself again in the face. I can't talk to anybody. And your story about wanting to make amends with Jay Leno because you felt so bad about those 10 seconds, to me is the great reminder of how we freak ourselves out when something happens, when the truth is, if you can save yourself, nobody remembers.
Not only that, the most important thing to remember about all of these things, it never kills you. You never die. It's not over, right? In fact, all these years later, anybody on any talk show that talks about a failure or whatever, it's the best story they have. It's hilarious. And it doesn't mean that you want to have the bad stories. Just know you're not going to die. It's not going to kill you. And your attitude about it has to be similar in that You're going to learn stuff. You're going to fall on your ass. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. The jugglers that drop a ball, that know how to make a joke and pick it up and get into the pattern, if they make 3 attempts, the audience is with them. And when they hit the final one, they go, oh, he did it, right? They're with you. But if you are the one beating up on yourself or whatever, nobody's interested in watching that. They're not interested in watching that kind of self-flogging of just a disaster going down the tubes. And anybody making an effort of any kind, I think we all appreciate that. It's the agony of defeat. It's part of what makes the Olympics so interesting is that anything could happen. Anything could. The person that trained in the barn that didn't have any equipment could win. The person who's the best could wipe out. Any of it could happen, and that is life, right? So now, how do you get up from that? What is it that happens? Those people that have had a life in crisis, they're the ones whose screenplays are the most interesting because they overcame a divorce. They overcame a thing. And you go, man, I can't believe it. That's back to the hero's journey we talk about. What gets in the way and what's the outcome? We love seeing people overcome those kind of obstacles. And I think I just think that if you're too safe, if you don't take a risk, then you don't get the big rewards. Look for somebody that can coach you in an area that you have a weakness. Find a partner that can co-write with you if you're not a great writer, makes you accountable to getting together every day. There's lots of, not everybody is meant to be a one-man shop, and there are people who are better at one thing than another. So let's say you're just a great actor and you can't even get on a flight at the right time, or you can't make an appointment or whatever. Get a business manager. Find a partner that's type A, knows how to make a list, can be sure you get to things on time, right? So those are all a part of building your business. And if you hate doing accounting, hire an accountant. Like, there's people for every part of this industry that can support what it is you do. And there are people who need you to support what they do. And I feel like that there's no industry that's more dependent on the group working it out. Anybody can help it succeed and anybody can help ruin it, right? So if you have a terrible editor or the director's not great or the whatever, there are people along the way that can improve it, and there are people who can damage it. And you want to be on the good side of that.
So I'm going to ask you to change your hat again. This time as producer, as slash agent. Somewhere in you doing your show, you saw that other artists needed support, and you rose to the challenge and say, hey, I can help you as well. I'm putting my show here. I can add your show to my list. What made you decide to be of service in that way?
Well, I'm a big fan of original content. I mean, even if something is created from a catalog of songs or what have you, I really like stuff that's the creative process and getting things on their feet. And I know original stuff is the hardest thing for people to buy into. They love buying a sequel. They love buying something where you go, it's this, but now it's a Broadway musical version of this, right? They love buying the stuff that's already got some, stakes and, feels like it's going to be a winner. It was because I was having success at performing arts centers and I was already in dialogue with many of them, and they would call me and say, hey, what's kind of like your show, but a female version? Or can we do a thing like this, but we'd love to have singer-songwriters involved. So it first began as helping people get their programming right. Hey, we need a piece of content around Valentine's Day that we had Harry Connick Jr. last year, but we don't want music. So what could we do? We go, well, if we did something comedic, how could we make it be about relationships? And we'll call the show My Funny Valentine, and we'll invite comedians to talk just about what they did in their relationships, whatever. So sometimes it was about building the programming first. When I started, I was commissioned to write a play called A Kodachrome Christmas, which I was naive, but I didn't realize why my shows stopped around Thanksgiving and didn't start until January 15th again. It's because they were doing Nutcracker and Santaland Diaries and Christmas Carol. They were doing the same, always Christmas content. And when a theater said, hey, could you write us a Christmas show? I went, oh, that I'm so dumb. Yet that would fill that huge gap in my schedule. And so it began that way. But in the course of that, I began to consult and help performing arts centers find clean comics or get some things together. I said, you know what? Maybe I'll have a roster where we curate them. And then that way, anywhere that Wonder Bread played, this show might be appropriate. Or anywhere the Good Humor Men did a show, maybe this show with these moms would be good, right? So it kind of became about, I really like the one-man show and two-man shows, but my producer hat did say to me, don't get into doing a big play. Don't get 23 trucks going on the road. Like, that's not your specialty. My specialty is the boutique, small thing. And then I realized comedy was really a key to it. So I came up with this sort of tagline for my company, Your Humor Resources Department, which is Sweetwood Creative's tagline. What it says, you're going to get something funny from here, and it's humor related, and we're going to be your resource to find it. So your people don't have to go looking through all those one-person shows. We'll pitch some of them to you. And I get dozens of them a year from outside sources who people want to be on the roster, and I always have to remind them I have a certain amount of time to negotiate and to go to conferences and to do all that. To be honest, my life would be much easier if I weren't talent anymore. Like, if I just said, I can't go on stage, because there's a robust amount of people that would like to take this position. But the interesting thing about the recipe financially is that if I go out and do the Wonder Bread years, which is a one-man show with me in it, I take home 100% of the income. If I work on somebody's thing and take it to a conference and showcase it and sell it and service it and contract it, I take home 15% of the cut. And so it means I have to have 8 or 9 things to spinning out there. Now, the advantage to this is different. I don't have to get on a plane. I don't have to go to the thing. I don't have to be at the tech rehearsal. Once we get all of the ducks lined up, and I feel like the pie is plenty big enough for all of us. And if I have the privilege to have the door open for me, I want to hold it open for other people. I want to say, hey, you did my show last year. You should be doing this show. I'm calling the right kind of theater at the right size for the right performer. I'm not, I think the learning curve took me, 15 years to understand, these big places they're not going to put my place on at a 2,000 place arena. It doesn't make any sense at all, right? But also, I'm not going to do it at a 100 place because of the price that I request. They got to have a certain amount of seats. And then that's all, I guess it's an advantage to the people I represent that I'm in constant dialogue with venues for touring shows. So I'm able to ask questions that a person couldn't cold call and say, how many shows are you doing this season? What's your average ticket price? What are your expectations for this? What are you missing in your programming? Oh, well, we need a Christmas musical. Do you have anything? Well, I don't, but I saw somebody when I was in New York, and I have a tendency to share referrals for things that I don't represent because I don't have anything like it. So I can't help. But every time that I give a referral that goes well, people call me, what do you got this year? What else? What ideas you have? So I think it's not technically being a thought leader, but it is being an influencer of sorts on venues of the size of the shows that I do. And, it was an amazing, fortuitous moment when you and Robert called saying, hey, we're going to do this thing, because he brings his own story to the stage. He brings his own, technical savvy, his direction, his performance, his acting. And I may know venues that might be helpful for that, and who have either done something else or who may specifically be looking for ethnic programming, which I don't. I'm not that. Like, there are different reasons that people book different things, and some of them are inspirational and some of them are financial and that sort of thing. So I enjoy knowing the some of the people in the places, but more, it's really interesting to me to try to get the audience to see new work. And I love when new work gets established and gets momentum, and then I don't have to do as much work because venues will call each other and say, hey, this is a show we did that was successful, or this is a show that was comforting when times were rough. At 9/11, we put this show in instead of Death of a Salesman because we felt that was like too heavy of content. So it's getting yourself into, as they say, the room where it happens, right? Being able to be in that dialogue is a shortcut for everybody.
So you talk about original content. So at APAP, there was a lot of repetitive content, a lot of stuff that, they're just regurgitating a lot of the similar stuff that they've done for years and years and years. But a small group was very original. So for that actor, that comedian, that singer, that performer who is original but lacks the courage because they feel, well, they don't want anybody like me. They want something, they want the same thing. They just want it with a different bow. What would you say to that person to motivate them or inspire them, or to give them enough courage to say, you know what, I'm going to stake my originality in the sand and I'm just going to go out there and do what I do?
Well, I would say that's the number one thing they should be thinking. There is a place for tribute shows. That's what we saw a lot of. You see an Elvis, you see a Buddy Holly, you see a Frank Sinatra, whatever. Those people are taking other people's catalogs and they're playing songs as, in a well responsive way, and they're giving people fast food, giving them what they want when they want it for a price. But if you are somebody who really is original and who really has a story to tell, it will take you a while to break through. But when you break through, you will be different from everything behind you. There will be people chasing it down, and they will be asking for you to be on their program and do their thing, because it will be an element that's unique to that particular episode of that show or what have you. And it is definitely, I would say, the harder of the two things to do. But when you land, you really land gloriously. When the style of, somebody who, when you think about singers and you think about Cyndi Lauper, you think about somebody, when their brand is so unique, there's not another voice like it or a style like it or a design like it. And I think that's definitely something that you kind of got to stay in for the long haul. But I've seen it happen a number of times, and I'm kind of impressed when a person internally knows what it is they're trying to do and trying to say, and they're saying, hey, this is not for everybody. And I will say the same. My show's very sugar-coated. The Wonder Bread Years, the one that you saw, it's very, inclusive. I try to involve everybody and that sort of thing. But, not every place programs comedy or theater. A guy might come by my booth and say, hey, that show's not for me. And I get like, what? Who doesn't like comedy? Well, we present dance and we present cultural events from, Chinese gongs to this thing to whatever, right? And I realize, we don't have any business doing business together. And there's no reason to be offended. It's like I invite those people to come to my showcase just to have a laugh and take an escape from their day. But the truth is that that's the way it is in life. That's the way it is in romance. Like, just because you like somebody doesn't mean they have to like you. Like, you're trying to build relationships that, in the arts, I feel like we're in it for a really long haul. And so treating people the right way, doing the best you can, seeing how you can be of service to each other is what keeps us, I think, what keeps us alive, right? It's what we're seeing, people standing up for each other in the streets. That's the root of what all this is. It happens that as artists, we get to express ourselves in a way where that heart, we wear it on our sleeve. And some days we're in the corner of that college without the sound system and whatever. But I do think that sometimes you hit the one person who needs that art, that person who comes up afterwards and says, I wasn't in a good place today, and I'm in a better place from having experienced that. Thank you for reminding me with your poetry or your song. Those are the big, big take homes that I feel like an artist would rather hear that than a standing ovation.
And that's where we drop the mic.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you. This was fabulous. I First of all, I just want to tell you how much I love you, how much I love your artistry, your generosity. I don't know you very long, but what I have surmised from you is how generous of a performer you are. That is what we do here at Acting Smarter Now. We are about sharing the wealth, sharing the information, helping people to level up, to say, we're we see you, we hear you, and we are championing you. And that is what you do, Pat. So I'm grateful that Don Reed brought us together, and I look forward to many, many more opportunities to work together.
Thank you. And listen, this is a great podcast that I'm going to start focusing on. I haven't really done a lot of exploring because I've been doing that podcast of my own, which is called Creativity in Captivity. But I had such a wonderful conversation with Robert Townsend on the show and so many other people. I would just say that if any of your listeners want to seek out actors or writers or directors, they're very, very forthcoming in podcasts. People have a tendency to really share insights and inspirations that are better than going to school, as far as I'm concerned.
And I would say to my audience to follow you, and we will put the link on the description below. Creativity in Captivity, which came out of the pandemic. Is
It,
that
it
when you
started during the
started it?
pandemic. It's funny, the title was not intended to be a pandemic title because I had written that down previously. And the notion was to hold a creative person for study, right? Like take them out of the wild, study them for an hour, and then release them back to the wild. So that was what the idea was. And that coincided with the pandemic and us all being sheltered in our homes and so forth. And then it sort of I kept the title, and now we're still, in the show, we still do the same sort of thing, but we don't spend our time talking about the pandemic anymore. Thank you so much for your insightful curiosity. And listen, anybody who wants to be creative, it's kind of up to you to set the roadmap of where to go. Your parents, your siblings, whatever, they're not going to tell you the next step. You just have to kind of keep taking a step forward every day and acting smarter now, as we say.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Acting Smarter Now. Oh my God, I just thought that Pat Hazell knocked it out the park. He gave us so many tools. I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments below. And if this channel helps you in any way, please support us by buying me a coffee. And if you can't do that, subscribe, like, and share the videos with your friends. Now, don't go anywhere because coming up, we got another great episode to help you take your career from undiscovered to unstoppable. And we ain't playing.